prayer to God, the Archbishop of York, holding the crown in his hand, turned to the people. Harold knelt humbly at the steps of the high altar, while a breathless hush filled the great church from end to end. Then, in the silence, the voice of the old Archbishop rang out clear and sharp.
"Do you choose Harold, Earl of Wessex, son of Godwin, to be your king?"
Like the thunder of the waves as they break upon the beach came the answer, "We do, we do." The words sounded again and again through the aisles of the great church, echoing and re-echoing from the vaulted roof, till it seemed as if all England had answered. Outside the church the people took up the cry, "Harold, son of Godwin, Harold, son of Godwin, Harold the Englishman for our king." In the silence which followed, Harold placed his hands between those of the Archbishop and promised to fear God, to rule wisely, and to keep the laws of the land. Then the Archbishop, speaking solemn words, anointed him with holy oil, placed the crown of England upon his head, and the scepter in his hand. Harold rose from his knees, no longer Earl of Wessex, but King of England. As he turned to the people, he looked so brave, handsome, and kingly that a cry of love and gratitude rose from them, and once again the arches of the great church rang with shouts. One after another the lords and mighty men of England passed before their king. They knelt to him, promising to be true to him, to fight for and obey him, just as he had promised that he would try to rule well and be a good king. At last the solemn ceremony was over. Harold passed down the long aisles, followed by the Archbishop and bishops in their splendid robes, and the lords and knights in their shining armor. Out of the dim church into the open air they went, and out into the sunshine where the people were waiting for their king. When Harold appeared, wearing the crown and royal robes and carrying the scepter in his hand, they shouted and cheered again and again for joy. "Harold forever, Harold the King," they cried. So Harold was crowned, and all England was glad and at peace. But the peace and gladness did not last long. As soon as Harold was crowned, the few Normans who still remained in England fled to Normandy. They went to Rouen, the town in Normandy where Duke William lived. Nowadays, if one wants to speak to a king or great prince, it is not always easy, for soldiers and servants guard the doors. But in those days it was much more easy, so one of the Normans who fled from England went to find Duke William, for he knew he had great news to tell. William was out hunting when this messenger from England arrived. He was so eager to tell the news that he could not wait until the Duke returned, but followed him into the park. He searched about for some time, and at last saw William riding towards him, surrounded by all his lords and ladies, his falcon on his wrist, and his bow in his hand. The Duke looked so splendid and powerful that the messenger was almost afraid to tell the news he brought. "My lord," he said, dropping to his knees, "Edward, King of England, is dead." Duke William's bright eyes shone with joy. "Ah!" he exclaimed. "And Harold, son of Godwin, is crowned king in his stead," went on the man. Then Duke William's eyes flashed with fire, his bow dropped from his hand, and his face grew red and dark with anger. "The Saxon dog, the oath-breaker," he thundered in a voice which made those who heard him tremble. Then he was silent, and those around him were silent too, trembling in fear before the awful wrath of their lord. For many minutes William sat in dumb rage, clasping and unclasping the rich cloak which fell from his shoulders. Then, still without uttering a word, he turned and rode back to his palace. He seemed neither to see nor hear anything, but throwing himself on a couch, he buried his face in his cloak and gave himself up to angry thoughts. His courtiers stood round whispering and frightened. At last one, more bold than the others, went up to him, and laying his hand upon the Duke's shoulder, "Rouse yourself, my lord," he said. "You have a message to send to Harold Godwinson before the common folk hear how he has insulted you." "Aye, that have I," said William fiercely. Then he called for the man who had brought the news. He came in, fear and trembling, but William only looked darkly at him. "Go," he said after a pause, "go back to England. Tell Harold Godwinson," he would not call him King Harold, "that I, William of Normandy..."